Hey y'all, I'm Kat.
And I'm Michelle. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Bama Blue Dots. This week, not only do we have a special guest, we also have a special co-host, Jennifer Boozer Stewart from the Sweet Home Cannabama radio show. Thanks for joining us, Jennifer. Can you tell our listeners who aren't familiar with you about yourself and your advocacy?
Well, I started the very first hemp dispensary in the state of Alabama in 2018 after discovering CBD and it changing my life and realizing I could change everybody's life around me, and came up on the wall of what is it? What does it do? Where does it come from? Is it weed? Is it going to make me a drug addict? And I started learning about the plant and fell in love with learning about the plant and teaching it to other people. So that started my advocacy journey, being boots on the ground with the people of Alabama and traveling the country and meeting people that had been doing this for a long time. Was teaching classes, and the radio station here in Mobile came to me and said, "Hey, this is a very popular subject. We'd love to have a talk show about it. We'd like it to be you," because they had heard about my classes. So I've been doing radio now for almost 7 years, right out of Mobile, Alabama. Until this September, we were the only cannabis radio talk show on FM radio in the country. We started live streaming on social media as well about 2 years ago. And we talk to farmers, chemists, researchers, cannabis physicians, nurses, brands, manufacturers, politicians, candidates, lawyers, anybody you could think of. And especially in the last few years, there's been a lot of legislative shakeup, not only in Alabama, across the country, and even in the federal government. So it's a never-ending thing for me to discuss it every day, to teach it every day, and to fight for it every day. When HB 445 was passed and I had to close that very first dispensary in Alabama, we were a month away from 7 years. It's like, what do we do now? Having to say, I can't help you is pretty hard. But I believe that the people of Alabama deserve access to plant medicine. I believe that the last 7 years, 98% of us doing it did it well. And we helped a lot of people. And I continue to fight for that. And I plan to fight for it as long as I can. We do that with the radio show. We do that with trying to pass new legislation, not that easy in an election year, and trying to influence policies for the people of Alabama.
Jennifer, thank you so much for being here and being our resident expert on the topic. Now we need to introduce our guest this week, Democratic candidate for Alabama's Commissioner of Agriculture and Industries, Mr. Ron Sparks. Welcome, Ron. Can we call you Ron?
You call me Ron.
Thank you for being here. And before we get started, can you just tell us more about you and why you're running?
Oh, absolutely. Number one, I held this office for 2 terms, and I'm very proud of the record that we've had there. First of all, let me say this. I thank her for being an advocate for the people of Alabama. We need to continue to try to educate folks to help them understand what it is and the benefit that it gives. But I grew up in Northeast Alabama. I grew up in a little town called Fort Payne, Alabama. I've been around government and politics a long time. I got elected the first time in 1977. So I've been around a long time. I've sat on the sideline for the last few years and watched the Department of Agriculture. And some of the things that's happened at the Department of Agriculture, I personally don't agree with, whether it be the livestock investigators that they don't have anymore, whether it be investigating, checking the gas pumps and gas stations that they don't have anymore. I really didn't agree with the Department of Agriculture when they pushed back and said they didn't want to have anything to do with cannabis. I just don't think they've been as proactive. So I feel like it's time for me to come back and see what we can do at the department and work with the people of Alabama to try to make things better, whether it's agriculture, whether it's food safety, whether it's the nutrition for our kids in school. So I'm coming back. I know it's a different day, it's a different year, it's a different meat, but I feel like I've got it in me and I'm ready to go, and we're going to see what happens.
So, Ron, as you said, you previously held this role beginning in the early 2000s for 2 consecutive terms. In your second race for this position, and won 62 out of 67 counties. How were you able to overcome the partisan divide running as a Democrat in what some people would consider a deep red state?
Well, I think one thing, they watched me for 4 years. I never made a decision at the Department of Agriculture based on my party affiliation. And anybody that would do that would be totally wrong. It's more of a consumer protection agency. It's to protect the consumers. It's to market our products. It's to base a lot of your information on science that makes sure that you know what you're doing. It's animal health issues. Those are things that you get up every day to try to make Alabama a better place. So I think that's one thing, treating people right, telling people the truth, not playing silly games, listening to people, and working hard. And that's what I did. We made it one of the best departments of agriculture in the United States. And I'm proud of that record. Not only that, during that period of time, I was elected president of the National Association of Departments of Agriculture throughout the United States, and was able to go to Washington, meet with the administrations, talk about different sectors of the country and how agriculture in the South is different than agriculture on the West Coast. There's a lot of difference, so you have to advocate and bring it all back together. But the people of Alabama have been good to me, and I'm honored and I'm humbled. I'm going to go do that same thing again.
Awesome. Now, like you said, times have definitely changed, and the Republicans of the early 2000s, we're not dealing with the same Republicans nowadays. Unfortunately, MAGA has taken over the party, and people are more polarized than ever. So my question is, how do you plan to beat the big red giant in the midterms?
My plan, number one, is outwork them. Number two is talk about things that really matter. It is a different challenge. There's no doubt about it. But I'm not going to talk about things that doesn't matter. I'm not going to divide this country. I'm not going to go down the hatred road. I'm just not going to do that. That's not me. But I will talk about things that matter in Alabama, whether it's 515 babies that die a year to infant mortality, whether it's health care in the rural Alabamas, whether it's hospitals closing, whether it's farmers about to go broke, whether it's making sure that our food supply is safe. Those are the things I'm going to talk about. And I'm going to take my message out there just as hard as I can across this state. If anybody could get in the car with me and travel with me 1 week, they would see the things that we are able to do. So I think we have a message. I think we can stand toe to toe, and we do realize the challenge. But a lot of a statewide campaign is name ID. Being that I've been on the ballot 6 times and I was the Democrat nominee for governor, I think my name ID is out there. I was on the gas pumps for 8 years. A lot of people knows the name Ron Sparks. They probably don't know me, but they've heard that name. So come on down and look at me, and maybe we pull this thing off.
Before we get too deep into things, I need to confess something. I've personally been really ignorant as to how expansive this role is. I always heard Department of Agriculture and Industries and assumed it was limited to cows and corn. But there is so much more that goes into this role, isn't there?
To be honest with you, some of the folks running think the same thing. That's all they want to talk about. I'll give you a good example. Seafood that was coming in from foreign countries that was contaminated. I stopped it at the dock in Mobile. I went to Cuba. I went to the Ukraine. I went to India, Africa, around the world, opening up markets for our farmers. And I understand, a lot of people don't understand. For example, a gasoline station. We used to send inspectors out that would check those gas pumps for 2 reasons. One, to make sure that if you paid for a gallon, you got a gallon, okay? But 2, to make sure that if you bought 93 octane, you got 93 octane. That was not always the case. We found 87 octane in 93 tanks. So we would tag those pumps and stop it. They don't do that anymore. The next time you go to the gas station, read that sticker on the pump. It says the owner of this facility is responsible for the accuracy of this pump. Well, that's the Fox Garden and Hen House. Not only that, when hurricanes came through Alabama and people started price gouging, I prosecuted them. When hurricanes come through New Orleans and Alabama and people would not go to safety because of their pets, we came up with a program to help people take their pets, and we would store them and give them back to them after the disaster. Puppy mills. We went out and we prosecuted folks that did puppy mills across Alabama. We were very proactive in trying to do the job that the Department of Agriculture should do, and that's exactly what we're going to do again.
You had my vote with puppy mills.
You know, I was just involved in this new legislation that just got passed.
Really?
Absolutely.
I'm so excited about that.
Well, I had 10 law enforcement officers at the Department of Ag for a number of reasons. If a farmer lost equipment, if a farmer lost cattle, if people in Alabama in the rural area needed help, we had our officers that were there. They would go to cattle sales. They worked with law enforcement. They don't have them anymore. Who they're going to call? Pick up your phone and try to get somebody to come out and check that cow that you got stolen. Get them to come out and try to check that bulldozer and see how long it takes, or that piece of equipment you got that you're going back in the field with. We don't have that anymore. They want to continue to cut it to the point that it's not effective no more. I'm not for that, and I'm going to call it out, and I'm going to take my message to the people. But let me just say this. I don't know how political I can get, but I want to say this.
Our podcast is Bama Blue Dots.
I want to say this. Look at the fundraising. One of my opponents put $500,000 of his own money in the campaign, or one of the guys running on the side. One put $250,000 flying around the state in a jet. The job pays $103,000 a year. Put that math together. I put $5,000 of my money. I started out with $5,000 of my money. And I go out and raise the money. I've always believed if they're not willing to help you, they're not willing to vote for you. It is harder for Democrats today. I promise you it's harder for Democrats to raise money. But they want to buy these offices. They want to go out and buy these offices. They're cutting it down to the bone. They're not serving the people of Alabama. I'm 73 years old. I was retired. I didn't need a paycheck. I didn't need a job. I was perfectly okay. But I can't sit on the sideline any longer and watch them cut that department to pieces down to the point that they might as well do away with it. And I'm going back for one reason and one reason only, is to give back to the people of Alabama what they deserve.
Well, speaking of the fox and the hen house, I'm going to take a question. I want to talk more about that because currently the ABC board is now in charge of enforcement of HB 445, which we all know is the new law about consumable hemp products for retail licenses and finished goods, largely because the Ag Department has refused to take that on. Now, we know the Ag Department oversees growers' licenses and inspections and processing, but they have not wanted to do retail licensing and finished goods. I personally had an experience at the Farm Expo in 2019 asking, at the time it was Miss Ellis, does the state plan to create a retailer's license so that we know who is selling these products and who's not? Because I could already tell somebody somewhere is going to take advantage of this situation, and I don't want to get blamed for it. And then here we are 7 years later, and that's what happened. Why do you think that they didn't want to take that on? Why split it into two different regulatory situations and enforcement situations?
The Ag Department is responsible for those kind of things. And the sad thing about it, they probably took some things off of the shelf and left things there that's a hell of a lot more worse than what they took off. There's things out there right now that if you can read it, if you'll take your microscope and put it down on that label, it'll tell you that this stuff can probably make you want more of it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I said Fox in the Hen House because it's the ABC board. It's alcoholic beverage control. And the alcohol industry nationwide is losing sales to the tune of tens of billions. People are drinking less, which in my opinion is a good thing.
And, you know, I've sort of watched the cannabis thing that's been a total disaster.
Oh, it's a national embarrassment.
It's awful what's happened there. And then there again, you had the Department of Agriculture that even had a law passed that said, we don't want this. Let's push it back. Well, you know what? We have the labs. We have the ability. We have the experts. We have the investigator, or should have the investigators. We have the inspectors. We have the expertise to do the things that need to be done. I would commit to you or anybody else. That's a conversation that we will have.
Well, given the last 7 years of oversight enforcement done by Ag for growers and processors combined, it's a well-known fact that the ABC board has no idea how to handle this.
Right.
The employees from the ABC offices, the regional ones, the state one, they'll tell us on the phone, we don't know. We have to wait on a lawyer. We're 10 months into this situation. No licenses were available for January 1st. So the ones that didn't go out of business, like me, couldn't sell anything for the last 4 months because they didn't have the city approval process in place. Wouldn't it make more sense, though, if you're going out and you're from seed to soil to testing the plant in the field, and then when it's harvested, and then overseeing the processing that makes the products, wouldn't it make sense to continue that and say, well, here's just all the retailers' licenses is a list of who's doing it and who's not. We welcomed it. Come in, inspect my store, ask me questions, let me show you what I'm doing and what I'm selling. But there's a lot of people out there that have no problem with that. We wanted regulation.
Yeah, most people do want regulations. Most people want fairness. They want good government. They want somebody that's reasonable. That's what people want. You know, there's a lot of times you'll get a few bad actors. I mean, that's what our job is. You know, we regulate the termite industry, the pesticide industry. 99% of those folks are great people. We found folks that sprayed water. We found folks that didn't want to do the right thing. We found folks that didn't give the consumer what they paid for. That's our responsibility. I'm a worker. I grew up in a very hardcore working environment. My grandmother raised me. She stood at a podium 43 years and paired socks. My mother made those socks. I started out working in a sock mill, and I can tell you that's one reason that when I graduated from high school, I had a very low draft number, so I joined the Coast Guard. I was in the Honor Guard. I served my country. I've always tried to achieve the highest level of anything I try to do. This is my question to them. Tell me what I did you don't like.
Right.
I don't think they can come with it. I sat down when different organizations had different ideas, whether it was animal rights group, whether it was environmental
Right.
folks. I sat down with them. I never closed the door on nobody. And I think that's the way it's supposed to be. But there's a lot of education that's got to be done. But I'm just saying, look at the state of Alabama with opioids and how we have PTSD and how we have Parkinson's. You know, one of my best friends at the group Alabama died with Parkinson's. And there's just things that we can do to do better. And we don't need to put our head in the sand. We don't need to penalize people for no reason. Let's just do the right thing.
Right. When you have law enforcement people coming in, you have mothers of severely autistic children, and you have doctors and nurses coming to you, and the Mitchell Cancer Center sending you patients who need help with their chemo. Tell me what was wrong with all that. You know, if we were doing something so heinous, why were those people putting my brochures in their doctor's lobby? And what you said about sitting down with people, I think that's a huge thing, because not one time in the years we've fought, and especially not last session, did anybody sit down and say, what's really going on? What are you doing? What are you selling? And what do the consumers want?
It was a knee-jerk reaction.
Nobody wanted that bill, and it passed anyway.
You know, I ran for governor in 2010. I won the Democratic nomination. I give 2 years of my life running the state of Alabama. And when the election was over, Governor Bentley called me and said, Ron, I want you to come down and talk to me. I went down and talked to him, and he said, I don't think there's anybody that understands rural Alabama any better than you do. Would you be interested in trying to help me? And I said, give me a couple of weeks to think about it. I just lost an election. My heart was killing me. I'd put my life into it.
Yeah.
But I sat down and I got to thinking, Ron, there's a lot of folks out there that you care about that may not get represented. Suck it up. Don't let your ego get in your way. And I went to work with Governor Benton. I doubt if it's ever been done in the history of this country that a Democrat nominee for governor that got beat by the Republican nominee that went to work in his administration. Let me tell you what we did. We brought telemedicine to the state of Alabama. In 2011, when Alabama didn't have telemedicine, we brought it to Alabama. That was at the point in time that doctors didn't really want it. Insurance companies didn't really want it. But when COVID came around, it was a game changer. And now you're seeing telemedicine begin to expand. And there's nothing anybody can do to stop it now, because people are seeing the benefits of it. So it's like the cannabis deal. It's all about putting another tool in the tool bag and something that's going to help somebody. And I say that I just wanted to get that story, is that I got people that understand where my heart is, and they know me, but they also know the challenge. But that's what I'm saying. It's all about working together and doing the right thing for the people of Alabama. And I can promise you, I don't care who it is. My door is open. I work hard, and I'm going to give people 4 years. I'm not going in to run for re-elections. I'm not going to be working when I'm 80 years old. I'm just not going to do that. I want to go back and get that department right. I want to go back, get it to where it needs to be, and hopefully somebody will come in behind me that won't tear it down again.
So on the topic of the industrial applications, because now we've got laws that separate consumable from truly industrial hemp, why do you think that maybe not no one, but almost no one is growing for building materials like hempcrete, insulation, wood products like flooring and furniture, textiles in an obvious farming state like Alabama, like the folks in Kentucky and Virginia and other southern states that are, there's so few people doing this. I think I know all of them because I've interviewed all of them, but there's so much more potential for this plant outside of gummies and drinks and tinctures. I know that Alabama passed, I think it was SB 393 in 2016, and it was a unanimous vote. They wanted to be on the forefront of this, and they've always said we meant rope and fibers and stuff. So why has that never come to fruition? Why do you think that is?
I think it's just a lack of knowledge. It's a lack of understanding. I think it's pretty simple that we're closed-minded on a lot of things. We just get it in our head that it's bad. We listen to the wrong people sometimes. We don't have an open mind. We're closed-minded about a lot of things. Why do we still have an expanded Medicaid? Why are we talking about stealing elections in Alabama when I don't know of a Democrat that stole an election any time in the last 50 years? Why aren't we talking about things that really matter? Why are we continuing to let our hospitals close in Alabama?
Because it's easier to bitch about fake things than it is to actually address issues.
Why are we talking about the Muslims and people of color? Why are we being so racist?
Why are we beefing with the Catholic Church?
Yeah.
Why are we fighting with the Vatican?
Absolutely. And
Right.
that's just where I'm at. I'm just not going down those roads. I can tell you, it'll be a new day. If we can pull this thing off, it'll be a new day. I can
Yeah.
promise you that.
Do you agree, though, that Alabama could be on the forefront of hemp and cannabis? I mean,
Absolutely.
I tell people all the time, I think that Alabama is uniquely positioned. We have a farming community. That's what Alabama is. We have the most biodiverse landscape in the country, and we have this delta soil and the black belt. We should be dominating in industrial applications as well as medicine. People in arid places like Nevada and Colorado should be asking for that good stuff from Alabama. And we're passing up opportunities, ways to save people's family farms, create jobs and income, and truly be on the forefront of this.
I agree with you 100%.
I appreciate your perspective, and I sure do hope you win now.
Well, I hope I win.
I have spoken to another Democrat candidate before on my show, but every other Republican candidate that I've tried to reach out to, I get nothing.
I hope I win because I'd love to have an opportunity to work somebody that has the knowledge of you about such a very important industry. I know as much about what's going on in the medical marijuana side of things as probably anybody. I've watched that thing from a very close, and I'll tell you, I've never seen nothing this messy in my life, but that'll work itself out at some point in time, hopefully in the court system.
So, Ron, as we have previously noted, you've held this office before. In your experience, how do you see the Commissioner of Agriculture's role in a fight that touches energy, land use, corporate power, and rural America?
Well, first of all, when I was Commissioner of Agriculture, I'm the only commissioner in the last 15 years that had a Farm Preservation Act. We went out and we bought easements from farmers to make sure that that land stayed in agriculture for eternity. And I doubt if they've saved an acre of land. We're losing land. We've got to have some type of, and this is where a lot of learning has got to be. Our farmland has been taken up acre by acre, especially down in your neck of the woods. And we've got to figure out a way to help those folks with easements to where they can stay on the farmland. You know, you can't blame a guy that's had farmland and struggling on it, trying to make a living for years and years and years. And then somebody comes in and offers him some type of enormous price for it. But that's where the Department of Agriculture should have some type of a program to where we could keep it in farmland and help them. I've never been for big government grabs. I'll just be honest with you. When we had companies that mistreated our cotton farmers in Alabama, I flew to St. Louis and said, you're not going to treat our folks any different than you treat other states. When they were mistreating our poultry farmers, I flew to Chicago and sat down with those folks and I said, enough is enough. My farmers are just as important as anybody else. I'm willing to take on anybody that's not doing the right thing and being fair to the people of Alabama.
So there is, a controversial solar project planned near Stockton. While Alabama Power is not building it, it does have a purchasing role tied to the project. What role should Commissioner of Agriculture play when agricultural land, timberland, wetlands, and communities around those areas are affected by projects like this?
They should be at the table. The agriculture department should be at the table to make sure that the ag communities are protected. Now, I know that they tried to put a moratorium on solar projects, but if you look at the Black Belt, there's plenty of places where you could possibly put these type of things. We need to look at all types of energy, but we don't need to abuse the folks in the areas that we are. There was a lot going on before it became a real big issue down there that all your politicians came around with their hair on fire. They knew more about it sooner, but when they found out the public wasn't real satisfied with it, then that's when they came out and started doing the things that they started doing. So I just think being honest, open, having meetings, let people understand what's going on, how it's going to be handled, the whole 9 yards. So I think being involved, being at the table and having an opinion on it.
Our issues with Alabama Power are not new ones. We have Plant Berry's coal ash pond that has sat upstream from Mobile Bay since 1965. It's located in the Mobile-Tensas Delta floodplain. We've seen both federal and advocacy records describe ongoing groundwater contamination concerns, plus the risk that pollutants can migrate into Mobile watershed. There's also now peer-reviewed research showing cadmium enrichment in suspended sediments near the plant's discharge channel. with the highest arsenic levels in that study described as similar to levels documented after the Kingston coal ash disaster. Mobile Bay and its delta are nursery habitats for species like white shrimp and blue crab. Both those species, they live on the sediments where contamination collect and feed off organisms that are contaminated from that sediment. How much risk is acceptable in a system that supports both biodiversity and people's livelihoods?
I don't think there should be any risk. That's why I stopped contaminated food coming into Alabama. That's why I stopped people from sending food into Alabama that had fluoroquinolones, antibiotics, Malachi green. And speaking of coal ash, I wrote letters when I was commissioner when they were doing what they were doing. I said, this is not a good idea. So again, it's my job to do everything I can to protect the consumer, protect the people, protect our environment, protect our farmer. And I want to be at the table and I want to know what's going on. I'm not one to let people run over nobody.
And that's fantastic because you're right. The broader health claim is that coal ash contains contaminants associated with cancer risk. And the EPA has said exposure can lead to serious health concerns, including cancer, if coal ash is not properly managed. Federal and advocacy sources also documented groundwater contamination concerns at Plantberry and other Alabama coal ash sites. Do you think Alabama has asked coastal residents to bear an unacceptable health risk so a utility company can avoid the full cost of a cleanup? And also, if elected, where does this really sit on your radar with everything else going on?
It ought to be high on your radar. We need to make sure that people are protected. But pretty obvious. You watch what the legislature did this year. They pretty well put a muzzle on ADM and said, you can't do anything other than the federal government. Well, if I had that same ruling put on me when I was the ag commissioner, I could have been able to do some of the things towards seafood coming into Alabama that I stopped, because the federal government will say, we will accept so much, but our policy is zero. Well, zero to me means zero. So putting a muzzle on ADM, I don't think was a very good idea to start with.
And I do want to talk a little bit more about your tenure as commissioner. One of the things I learned while researching for this episode is that you had a hand in building a really solid trade relationship with Havana. Mobile and Cuba have a rich history, with Havana being considered our sister city. You had a big part in facilitating exports of Alabama commodities to Cuba after Obama relaxed the trade embargoes to Cuba. What impact did that have on Alabama's economy? And do you think that's a trade route that could be reopened in the future?
Well, there again, it was sort of like everything else we've been talking about. It seemed like it scared the Department of Agriculture to death. Think that they were doing trade with an island 90 miles off of our coast, which was absolutely ridiculous. They have the embargo on those folks down there. And yes, what I did, and I started doing it really before Obama was elected. I went even when Bush was elected. When Russia was giving us some difficulties in our poultry industry, you can't stop a chicken from growing. I mean, they know in advance how many poultry they're going to have, what the end of the year is going to look like. And if the market changes, that really puts a pain on the poultry farmer. So I started looking for new outlets, and I went to Cuba and we opened up that market with poultry. But not only that, we sold them utility poles out of Baldwin County. I stood on the docks of Mobile and watched them load soybean to go to Cuba. I built a great relationship. And it was one-way trade. It was hard because it had to be all cash. We had to go through the proper channels, but I just believe in that. And again, we used our ability to sit down with other governments to benefit our farmers. That's just not been done since I've been gone.
I know it's like you said, it's crazy that we don't have an open trade route with a country that is, like you said, 90 miles off the coast.
Yeah, what's even crazy now is to think about that we would even go down there and have any type of military action.
Yeah, well, Trump wants to take them over now, so.
I've been to Cuba as much as anybody's been to Cuba. I've sat down with Fidel Castro and talked about the issues. He never put me in a bad spot. He never asked me to lobby Congress. He never asked me to do anything of that nature. We talked about nutrition. We talked about education. We talked about things that really mattered. I saw a lot of good things happen in Cuba. I was going to Cuba when they couldn't have a cell phone. They started allowing that. They started allowing them to have paladars, what you call restaurants in their backyard. There was a lot of things changed when you could fly from Atlanta to Havana, but those things have changed. And I understand it. You got folks in South Miami and you got Rubio that's never had a good opinion about Cuba. And it's a shame that we're in the situation we're in.
Awesome. Well, now that we've established what the Department of Agriculture does and learned more about your amazing track record in the role, We need to look at the issues facing Alabamians today and what we can do going forward. So we're going to have more with Ron Sparks after a quick break. Welcome back, y'all. Right now, Americans on both sides of the aisle can agree on one thing, and that is everything is too damn expensive, especially food. I know I've seen my grocery bill, what used to maybe be $100 is now $200 a week. It's gotten to a point where people can't afford to feed themselves. And if so, what is your plan?
First thing we need to do is get every tax dollar there is on groceries off now. That's the first thing we need to do. And I think the legislature's worked on that. But I did a piece the other day on one of my social medias. And the thing that I said to the people of Alabama, your groceries are going to continue to go up. And let me tell you why. It's because of the war that's going on over there in the Persian Gulf. Because 60% of the urea that comes to this country comes out of there. 40% of the ammonia that comes to this country comes over there. So fertilizer prices are going up, and it's killing our farmers. There may be some farmers that had fertilizer bought sooner than what all this war began. But now you've got farmers trying to figure out what to plant. What can we plant that uses less fertilizer? Your food prices are going up. But what we could do is continue to help farmers markets. I built as many farmers markets in Alabama as any commissioner in the last 50 years. I believe in locally grown. They've come out with a new program. I had locally grown programs when I was there. I started plasticulture programs so you could grow more on an acre of land. We've just got to be out of the box thinking and do everything that we possibly can to get locally grown products in Alabama. I'm glad to see more processing plants so that we don't have to go through those Midwest processors that are taking the profit from our farmers. Again, we need to think outside the box, do everything that we can to help the consumers of Alabama, and just do as much locally grown as we possibly can.
I mean, and even the processing, like I saw something recently, it was a thing of those little can of oranges, like little Mandarin ones. It said they were grown in Florida, but packaged in Vietnam.
That don't make no sense.
Makes
No.
no sense. So like, why?
Wow.
I mean, yeah, it's insane. I need to find it. Those little fruit cups. It was one of those.
Well, again, it's sort of like letting Argentina open the door on your beef products in this country. Somebody sent me a picture the other day. They were buying a steak and it said the product of Mexico. At one point in time, you could send a cow from Argentina to Alabama. You slaughter it in Alabama. They call it USA beef. I mean, there's just so many loopholes out there. And I was really active nationally. I've been around for 2 farm bills. I don't know that they've done a farm bill since I've been there, but I was around for 2.
No, we have not.
And there's one coming up, and we need to get on top of it, and we need to be there. We need to let our voice be heard, and we need to work our Congress, and we need to do everything we can. So again, being proactive, being aggressive, and doing what needs to be done, that's what we're going to do.
Just for historical clarity there, the 18 Farm Bill, which is what allowed the hemp industry to flourish, expired in 23, and they have not
No.
passed a new one. We are still following 2018, and it's largely due to SNAP benefits. They cannot agree on SNAP benefits, and that's 80% of what the Farm Bill is not.
And most people don't understand that, but you're exactly right, 100%.
I didn't understand it because I'm like, what the heck does that have to do with this? Well, it's all on a big package. But yes, we have to do something because of what's been happening in Congress with the continuing resolution in November, followed by an executive order from President Trump to preserve the full spectrum hemp products and things like that. But yes, we need a new farm bill desperately.
Well, also them stripping U.S. aid.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of people saw that as us just wasting our money and sending it overseas. No, that was subsidizing our farmers.
Well, it rotted.
Yeah.
That food rotted. People died. They had no compassion for human life in that situation. That was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. Anytime that you can make a decision where you know for a fact that young children are going to die because of your political maneuvering, I just don't agree with that.
Yeah, it's not like that we were lacking the food we were taking out of
Right.
mouths of people here in
Right.
the state.
And it hurt our farmers. Our farmers were benefiting from it.
Mhm.
With all the tariffs, they've lost the soybean industry. When Brazil and those folks get these markets, watch how hard it is to get it back. And you still have these farm organizations around Alabama that tells farmers everything's okay. Well, it ain't okay.
Trump said yesterday there was no inflation. So clearly,
There again, it was sort of like the first thing we talked about earlier. I hope some of these farmers really realize how they've been voting and it hadn't worked out very well for them.
yeah, I see it all the time where Republicans love to talk about all the things that are wrong. I'm like, you have all the power. Stop blaming it on Democrats when you hold all three branches of government, and especially like a state like Alabama, where there is a red supermajority, and there's been a red supermajority for
15 years.
So, like, if you're going to sit there and complain about the problems going on, that is your problem. That is something you created. And I don't know how people aren't seeing that and they continue to fall for it.
Well, and 4 more years for all of these incumbents who never have an opponent, and some of them been there 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
You've had all this time. What's 4 more years going to do?
Improve your stock portfolio.
Well, even in Alabama, I mean, look at the statistics. I mean, we're still at the bottom of about every statistic you can put us on. And there again, they've had control, whether it benefits agriculture, whether it benefits healthcare, whatever it may be. They've been in control. So they've got to own the problems that we have in Alabama.
I say often on my radio show that Alabama, and I say this when I get interviewed in other states, Alabama likes to succeed in 3 things: football, oppression, and poverty. Roll Tide.
And you can't even get them to talk about infant mortality. They talk about pro-life. And I tell you this, I can't give you the exact number, but go find out how many hospitals you can have a baby delivered in Alabama. Shrinking every day.
Yeah, I told the girls before, when we were battling these bills, we were in the health committee and the midwives were trying to pass a bill that would allow these women to do a heel prick test. That's it. And they bullied those midwives so badly that they withdrew their bill. But I learned during that argument that there are 23 counties where you can't have a baby and you can't go to a pediatrician. That's almost half the state. That's a third of the state.
And let me mention this to you. That was one of the things when I was the director of rural development. I started a program called Baby Box, where we would go out and give every mother a box that had a mattress that it was treated to where if the baby wet on it or whatever, it didn't hurt. And we educated these women of whatever the situation was, who they needed to go to, the phone numbers, because most of the babies that die in Alabama die from a sleep related because they put that baby in the bed with them. So we started what we call a Baby Box program. When Kay Ivey came into office, she did away with it. She did away with it, just completely. Boom. And our numbers were beginning to go down. And now they're back up to where they were. So that's the kind of thinking that we live with here in Alabama.
I actually lost a son, so I will happily go toe to toe with any legislator, especially somebody like, well, I won't mention him by name, but he's on the health committee and he's an OBGYN. They called us some ugly names and said some real horrible things about people like me that they don't know. And I came this close to asking him if I could call him a murderer because he had settled lawsuits where infants were dead and mothers were dead while in office. So I got your back on that. You need somebody to come and upset some folks over infant mortality.
Absolutely.
No woman should have to go through that.
Yeah. And let me give a little plug if I could. We got a young lady by the name of Ashley Dunham who's running for Supreme Court.
I love her.
Love her.
We love her. Yeah.
She's an IVF mother. And I'm going to tell you, she has a powerful, powerful message. And if every woman in Alabama could hear her message and not go vote for her, I'm wondering what they're really thinking. So I didn't know that y'all did know her. I'm glad you do. But I just wanted to say that because I think the world of her.
Yeah, she's so impressive.
She is awesome.
But her challenge is huge, just like all of us, and I'm doing everything that I can to help these folks. I mean, I took every dirt road in Alabama a number of times. I've been down these roads. I've been in all these counties. I've campaigned all these. I want to help these folks, do everything I can to help them.
No, absolutely. And so for many of our listeners that may not know, you helped lead the push for country of origin and seafood labeling in your previous terms. With Baldwin County so tied to fishing and seafood, including farm-raised catfish,
What more should Alabama be doing to protect local producers and make sure consumers know exactly what they're buying?
They've pretty well done away with all of our labs. I bought hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment so that we could check those products coming in down to minute parts per billion. And a lot of those chemicals, all you got to do is take the skin off of it and check it. That's where most of your chemicals go to. When you raise fish in the Mekong Delta, it's not going to be like it's raised in Alabama. And you just got to be proactive because our farmers can't compete with that. They can't compete with unfair and uneven playing fields. And I'm going to make the playing field even as I did then. And they've let it get slanted again. Let's get it back where it needs to be. When the processing plants down in Biola Battery were having issues, I worked with them to make sure we could keep those plants open. I'll give you another good example. Back when the oil spill happened, there were boats coming in from all over the country going out looking for those tar balls. They were not even hiring our fishermen. They were going broke. Our fishermen were the one that were going broke because they couldn't even go out and fish. I went down and sat down with those fishermen and sat down with the people that were handling those projects, and we got our fishermen out there doing the job rather than letting folks coming from all over the country, just doing the right thing, protecting folks and making sure that our folks don't get run over and having the courage and backbone to do it.
Many people don't realize that Alabama has some of the richest growing conditions in the nation. I mentioned earlier, a lot of people refer to South Alabama as the Amazon of the United States because of the biodiversity. But the vast majority of Alabamians lack access to fresh, locally sourced food. Why is that? And how do we get people out of nutritional deserts? I was up in Carbon Hill area, Walker County. The only thing they had was a Dollar General. Yep. There were no grocery stores, not even convenience stores. How are we going to get people good, fresh food and locally sourced foods? We're supporting farmers and giving our kids decent food.
Well, you also got to remember, I started the farm to school program. When I found out that this generation of children were not going to outlive me, I started putting satsumas from Mobile on our lunch plates. I started putting sweet potatoes from Coleman. I started putting apples from Jackson County. I took the soft drinks out of our schools. So those are things that I think are important, in my opinion, to try to help our young people become healthier. I mean, we were seeing young people that were getting type 2 diabetes, and still today. I think that's a part of the role of the Department of Agriculture is to make sure that we help our young people in Alabama. Food deserts, we've just got to work with local communities to try to get these markets in there, especially the farmers markets. The farmers markets are extremely important, but we got to be careful with these legislators that are beginning to pick and choose what you can buy with EBT cards and those kind of things. We got a lot of problems that we need to be dealing with on a daily basis that hadn't been dealt with in a long time. And that's another reason that I want to go back to the Department of Agriculture.
I mean, I know you said bringing things like satsumas into the schools and things that are grown locally, but how do we teach future generations not only how to eat well to prevent things like the type 2 diabetes, but also how to grow their own food? Clean food, good food, natural food, when most of what they eat is ultra processed and made super convenient. I've been a single mom, and I made a joke earlier, DoorDash kept us alive sometimes.
I don't know if you know this, but I'm probably the only commissioner that hired a nutritionist. I had a nutritionist on staff that would go out to schools that would do those things. And you also got to remember, when schools start cutting their budgets, the first thing they want to cut is the ag programs. And I put a lot of money in ag programs across Alabama to try to keep them alive where they could build their greenhouses. We were always trying to get federal money in here to build more hoop houses, to do plasticulture. I mean, you got to have vision and you've got to be willing to think outside the box and take a chance and understand the importance, and don't just let, because it's been that way, that's the way we do it attitude. That's not the way I operate. I'm willing to step outside the box and do whatever I need to do. But again, what commissioners hired a nutritionist? I don't even think they have a trade program anymore. They don't even want to check gas pumps anymore. So I really don't know exactly what all the department does now compared to what it did when I was there.
Well, right. Based on everything in this conversation and what I know about what's happening, it seems like the only thing we really do know is what the ag department doesn't want to do.
Absolutely.
Because that's all I've ever heard. They don't want to do this. They don't want to do that. I know that, the high schools have all sorts of different programs so kids can learn welding and they can learn CNA, but there isn't really anything in ag. Now, I will say my stepdaughter goes to Alberta High School here in Baldwin County. I was blown away when we pulled up to pick her up from band practice and they had goats and chickens and things right there on campus between the band building and the stadium. But my daughter's high school doesn't have that.
I'll tie this to it. I think you would have less crime if you could teach young people that don't have an opportunity to feed and love something that has a heart.
Right.
I just believe that because I was very supportive of our youth who wanted to show cattle, wanted to show, and you see how good a kid that kid is. I just believe that those kind of things are important. That's why we partnered with the Alabama Farmers Co-ops to have growing contests. They would furnish the plants for the kids to grow them. One of them was a cabbage, and you'd be shocked at how big some of these cabbages would be that some of these kids would grow. I'm all over that. I just think the more we can teach our kids to feed themselves and how to do it and how important it is and the nutritional side, I think it's important to the future of Alabama.
You know, I don't know how to do all the things that my grandmother could do. Most of us don't. I'm 48 years old and I tried a couple times to grow tomatoes and could never succeed, But I think there are a lot of areas in life where if people had more skills like that, had more opportunities to be around animals, that's why equine therapy exists, especially with nonverbal children and things like that. I think that you're right, that giving these children the ability to love something and take care of it and grow it and nurture it, I think that that's missing in society. I've always thought about it from an addiction recovery perspective. I would love to teach them to grow their own food and then show them how to cook it. And a lot of people can't cook. These kids cannot cook.
That's exactly why we hired a nutritionist, because we knew how important that was. I mean, I really took a big concern on when you started looking at statistics that this generation of children was not going to outlive me. I took a real concern in that, and I took on some pretty big businesses in that situation. When you start thinking about taking drinks or different things out of certain places, you're going to take on the big boys. But we were able to work out a compromise. It wasn't nothing that was perfect, but it was better than what it was. And you also look at the aspect of the schools that were losing funding. But we found out that machines that had water in it would make more money than the machines that had the soft drinks in them. We wanted to continue to make sure that the school made that money, but we also wanted to make sure that our children were healthy.
Right. I've never understood why schools would give kids the freedom to choose a 20-ounce soda in the middle of the day and all the repercussions that sugar and caffeine and preservatives and things. I never understood that. I mean, I grew up with a Dr. Pepper and a bag of Doritos in high school every day for lunch too, but it wasn't good for me. It created bad habits in me at a very young age.
Well, we've definitely changed the mindset to some degree, and we got to get in and do more to put more healthier products on our school plates.
I would venture to wage that a lot of kids in Alabama schools, given the amount of poverty in this state, I would venture to wage that there are a lot of kids out there who've never tasted real food.
You know, you mentioned something a minute ago. The USDA and the Secretary of Agriculture in Washington, they have what they call free lunch programs in the summertime. We had a hard time getting people to do that. It was federal money to come down to help feed our kids that were not in school at the time. And you really had to go out and really pull people into the program to get them to do that, because sometimes that's the only meal that child's going to get is at school.
Well, I mean, I can't think of any other way, as a mom, as a citizen of the state, and looking around, it's so much more expensive for these families to eat good fresh food than to eat bag of Doritos and Pop-Tarts, things that we know. No one's under any other illusion. We know it's killing us. And we're just shoveling it in our kids' faces. So I would love to see Alabama do something different.
We shouldn't base people's longevity of their lives based on the color of bread they eat. And most people can't eat the bread it takes to keep them healthy. And I mean, to some people, that's not a big issue. That really is a big issue. People shouldn't have different quality of life based on their zip codes. We need to work in rural Alabama. I've worked in rural Alabama a long time, and I know the problems, whether it be healthcare, whatever it may be. I know the problems from education right on down the line. So we need to continue to do everything we can to reach out in these rural areas of the state and help. They want to help. They're usually the ones that will do everything that you've asked them to do. You just got to get them the things to do it with. When you're in positions to make a difference, make a difference. Do things that really matter. Don't make decisions just based on party politics. Don't do those kind of things. And that's what we're seeing too much of today is politicians will say anything to anybody to get reelected. I never did that. I honestly never did. There's nobody that can go back and find decisions that I made based on whether I was going to get reelected or not. I based it on whether it was good, right, or just for the people of Alabama. And that's just the way I operate. And I'd like to see more people operate that way.
You're being given a job just like in any other situation. And in this situation, your boss is the people of Alabama. And in any other scenario, if you don't do your job,
You'll get fired.
you get fired.
I lived under term limits. I sort of liked it. I'd probably stayed at the Department of Agriculture if I hadn't had term limits. But by having term limits, it allowed me to do some other things. It made me do other things. And I don't have a problem with term limits.
Well, I mean, it gives you a deadline for performance in a way because, they say the way to keep power is to keep them stupid and keep them scared. So if you solve the problems, you don't have problems to run on.
That's right.
And that's what so many people in office have been doing. Because if you give them too much, well, then you're not going to have the big boogeyman to use as the potential threat.
I'm going to step out on a couple of the other issues that really concern me that they're using now. They're using these issues as they are big issues when I don't think they're as big as they make them. For an example, I wish somebody would give me a list of all the men that played in women's sports in Alabama.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
All because that one bitch got 5th place in a race.
And she still would have been 5th place.
You still would have been 5th place.
Well, why do we need to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America? And why do we pass 2 bills concerning the license plate designs?
But now they're going to spend millions of dollars on that particular issue and not say one word about our farmers going broke, our hospitals, our babies dying in Alabama, the things that really matter in Alabama, but they push those crazy buttons and get these crazy people to believe that. But you can't convince me that it is the number one issue. The number one issue is our hospitals are closing, that our farmers are hurting, that our babies die. Your insurance is too high, your power bill is too high, your food is too high. Why don't we talk about things that really matter and try to figure out a solution to them? But here we are talking about sending folks back to, I'm not for criminals being in this country, and neither one of y'all are. You can't convince me of that. Let me tell you who's suffering from that. Agriculture. You've got to have labor. When we're talking about fruits and vegetables, those are high intensity labor, whether you go pick tomatoes or whether you pick apples or whatever you may do. And if you'll notice, Alabama was one of the high numbers that they went after. We'll pay a price for that.
Baldwin County is the highest level of number of deportations, and they have billboards bragging about it.
That takes me to my question to kind of expand on that is, Alabama farmers rely on immigrant labor, whether politicians want to admit it or not. When aggressive immigration enforcement pulls workers out of the fields or scares them away from showing up, farmers are the ones left holding the bag. And ultimately, so are the consumers. Every single resident of Alabama, even in some of the surrounding states. What would you do as Commissioner of Agriculture and Industries? What would you do to protect the farms and the farm workers from policies that are destabilizing the agricultural workforce?
Well, I was defending this 15 years ago. They tried to make this an issue 15 years ago. And I explained to them then that we needed labor out in our farms, that we needed those folks, that I wasn't for people who had committed crimes and I wasn't for the killers and the rapists, but they don't think about those things. It's a hot button issue. It gets people's blood boiling and they use that. But I'm telling you, it has affected our farmers. It's affected our farmers in Blount County. It's affected our farmers in North Alabama. It's affected our building industry. And let me ask you a question. Tell me how many folks is going to crawl up on a roof and put a roof on in Alabama that you know of? Not many. I don't care what they call me. They call me woke. They call me anything they want to call me. They can use any of those names they want to call me. Look at my record. Look at my record. Look at what I've stood for. I was speaking out on this issue a long time ago. And now everything that I've told the agriculture community, it's happening.
I mean, like you said, it's more than just agriculture. It stems into housing. I work in real estate and it is slow construction. And you do the 1-2 punch of eliminating the labor force and these oppressive tariffs that are raising the prices on anything. People are getting priced out of home ownership left and right.
You've got the home builders in Montgomery. They're complaining now because they can't get labor. And the thing about it is the large percentage of these people that they're getting don't have criminal records. And the system is so, I don't know whether y'all remember this or not. Do y'all remember when George Bush tried to pass a comprehensive immigration package?
Which Bush?
I remember.
The last George Bush. Do y'all know who killed that bill? Alabama Senator Sessions.
I forgot about that elf-looking motherfucker.
Good people don't smoke marijuana. Oh, yeah.
Well, what's funny to me is 68 Ventures is one of the biggest investors in home building in the state. They're the first ones to bitch about it, but yet they are pretty much bankrolling Tommy Tuberville. It makes no sense to me why the same people who are complaining about it and who are the most impacted about it are still voting for this shit.
Let me give you another example. I know I've been around a long time, and Democrats in the Alabama legislature give school teachers a program called the DROP program. Well, it really helped keep school teachers in our schools. Now we can't keep them there. It really was, in my opinion, a good program. The Republicans came in, they took that program away from the school teachers of Alabama, and they still vote for them. Somebody's got to explain that to me. And that's the challenge that we have, folks. And we just got to get out there and work hard, hammer hard, and have folks like y'all that's willing to bring folks like me on and talk about the issues that they don't want to talk about.
This has been very eye-opening for me, for sure.
And we're so grateful that you came on. And the next question I was going to ask had to do with the shortages, the Strait of Hormuz, but you've already touched on that.
Your groceries are going to go up because you can't get fertilizer. I mean, I'm just telling you. And if you think you're seeing it now, just wait.
Oh yeah, it's going to be awful.
It's not going to be good.
It's going to be like, remember during COVID when no one could buy toilet paper? It's going to be like that again.
Even though we do use a lot of poultry litter in Alabama, you got to be real careful with that too. I mean, you can't just overload your fields with the poultry litter. I mean, you got to have common sense. You got to know when it's going to rain, but that don't benefit everybody. We do have that resource in the South that a lot of states don't have. But all across this country, this fertilizer deal, diesel fuel deal, I've even talked to farmers that go to Tractor Supply that says everything they buy there now has gone up. They need to vote for folks that really care, that really will try to solve some of the problems that they've got, that will really be open. You know, we can't solve all the problems, but I guarantee you we can do a better job than what's going on now.
I do want to kind of shift and touch on one thing before we sort of start wrapping up, and that is environmental issues. Recently, Alabama decided that the that'll work environmental policies of the Trump administration were good enough for us. So we have decided that we are just going to do whatever they say when it comes to protecting the environment, which we all know is going to be nothing but deregulation and trying to line the pockets of billionaires at the expense of people, the environment, animals, all of that. Can you explain to us the myriad of reasons that this is a bad idea? Because a lot of people see deregulation as good for commerce, but in the long run, it's really not, correct?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you know, we got politicians that want to cuss federal government and regulations. We need to protect our people. We need to protect our water. We need to protect our air. We need to do the common sense things that matter. They want to just pull the cape off of all of it and just let it go to hell in a handbasket. When you start telling people that everything is okay, that we're not going to protect, then you're going to start having some problems that people don't realize that are coming down the pipe. We always have those unintentional consequences that take place when you don't have common sense to try to make rules to do it. So I'm not for just pulling it all back and saying, but I'm also not for putting crazy regulations on somebody that really don't matter. Again, let's just communicate and try to make good policy. I haven't seen that happen in a long time.
You know, lately it seems like if they could do what they wanted, they would turn the entire state into either a solar farm or a data center.
That's right.
No, because you get penalized for having solar power in this state.
That's
Not
right.
if it's running a data center 3 hours away on your wetlands.
Touche. You should clarify solar
Right.
power for data centers, not solar power for people.
Okay, so what about pesticides like glyphosate, products like Appeal, that even our organic vegetables are now going to have this stuff on it, preservatives, hormones, all the things added to agricultural crops and animals even at every level. How do we protect ourselves and our kids from the damage or avoid it? I mean, it seems to me as a normal citizen, as a mom, as a worker bee, how do you even start to combat that? And how do we get the state government to understand we are poisoning ourselves?
Did you know that the Department of Agriculture has a pesticide lab?
I did not know that.
that we do. We have a pesticide lab in Auburn, Alabama that when I was there, I can't tell you what they do today. When I was there, we would go out and pull different products off of the shelf and bring it back to that lab to see what the residue was, whether if there was too much pesticide, if there was too much poison or whatever. Did you know that when I came into office, we were at the bottom of the barrel when it come to animal diagnostics? Being that we were such an agricultural state, a poultry state, a cattle state, our diagnostics was at the bottom. I built 3 brand new animal diagnostic labs in Alabama. I built a new animal diagnostic lab in Auburn. I built a new one in Boaz, Alabama, and I built a new one in Elba, Alabama. So my point is that we have the tools available to protect the consumers. Are we still using them? They've cut about everything else, but yes, we do. We have a pesticide lab. We're concerned about those kind of things. And when I was there, not only that, let me say this. We even implemented programs to where people would set bottles of old chemicals and things in their barn, for an example. Well, if you've got a tornado to come through and it blows all that stuff away, we would go out and properly dispose of that. We would have what you call disposable days for people that would have chemicals left over and didn't know what to do with them. The point I was making is that we do take a strong interest in our labs, our pesticide labs, our diagnostic labs, and we brought them up to date when I was there. Tell you what they're doing today, but it don't mean that's what they'll be doing in a year from now.
Right. Well, it sounds like if you manage to get elected, that you've got your work cut out for you to reestablish. But the beautiful thing is you've done it once from nothing.
Well, that's what I tell folks all over the state. It'd take me about 10 minutes to figure it all out, where it's going to take them about 10 months.
So, Ron, we often hear that environmental regulations are bad for farmers' bottom lines, and also see a lot of politicians sell deregulation as pro farmer or it being necessary for a free market. And as you've said, polluted water, degraded soil, and weak oversight costs money and lives. What's your plan on combating this narrative and re educating the populace on how that is actually anti farmer, anti free market, and it does not protect profits long term?
Well, the big thing there is now you don't have anybody that has the platform and willing to speak up. You know, if I'm sitting at the Department of Agriculture, there is a bigger platform for me to speak up. And anybody that knows me, I will. And, you know, we always talk about the farmer, how he protects the land, how he protects the environment, how we work on those type of things. So why do we want to move away from that? Why do we want to do anything that's going to harm society or harm health issues? I mean, for God knows, we don't have enough health facilities. We damn sure don't even make people sicker. It's just going to take being willing to have a voice and being willing to speak your voice and let common sense come into play. I'm asking them to elect me because I feel like, number one, I'm the best candidate. I have a record. Anybody that knows me, I'm not scared to speak my mind and do what's right. And, you know, I would hate to think that I've got to tie myself to another man to make me look good. I would hate to think I have to worship somebody else to make Ron look good. I'm not going to do that. That ain't me.
Preach. That is a big statement. Wow. You just blew my face off.
I'm going to tell you, being elected is not the most important thing in my life, but doing the right thing is. You know, I was raised by a lady that lived to be 101 years old. And my dad left me when I was 3 weeks old. And my grandmother's raised me. And I don't know whether y'all know this or not, but the first time I was elected, my 90-year-old grandmother stood on the Capitol steps and held the Bible when I was sworn in. That's where I come from. That's how I think. And that's me. And I really genuinely care about this state. And I'm not going to spew garbage to make me look good or get elected. I'll tell you the truth. And if it hurts your feelings, I'm sorry. I'll stand up for what's right. I'll stand up against big business. I'll prosecute you if you're wrong. I'll penalize you if you can't follow the rules. That's what you're supposed to do. But when I came into office, I told all of my investigators, treat people fairly. If they're out of compliance, help them get in compliance. If they're not doing the right thing, show them what they need to do to get there. But don't just walk in like you're wide open. You want to put somebody in jail. Let's help folks. And that's what we did. We had a great attitude at the department to try to help people have a better business, but comply with the law at the same time. You've got to have a balance.
Well, fun fact about me, I have never voted for a Democrat before. I haven't considered myself a Republican for a long time. I'm more of a libertarian if you have to label me something. However, I am voting for certain Democrats already, and I'm open to all of them because when I was fighting for my life and my business and the people of this state with everything I had, it was the Democrats who listened to me, who would sit and tell me, we see that y'all are calling and emailing, we sympathize with you. Down to the last day, fought for us. And since then, I've interviewed many, many candidates on both sides. And it's the Democrats who are not afraid to say, yes, I'm pro cannabis. Yes, I'm pro hemp. Yes, I'm pro people, and made the most sense to me. And everything you've said today, I mean, I'm so thankful that we got to do this because, of course, your reputation precedes you, but it's what people say is this much compared to what we've learned tonight. And I count it a privilege to be a part of this broadcast. But for the people that are listening who are usually straight ticket voters or people who aren't motivated to vote at all, why should people get up, go and vote for Ron Sparks?
Well, because I have a record. Look at what I did for the last 12 years at the department. I try to do the right things, treat people right, tell them the truth, and I don't give them sound bites. I genuinely care about people. I want people to be successful. I want people to be healthy. I want us to do the right things. I'm not just going to go along to go along. If it's wrong, it's wrong. Like I said earlier, I didn't need a job. I don't need a paycheck. I'm doing this because I love Alabama. And I'm tired of sitting on the sideline and watching what's going on and watching what people are willing to say or do to get elected. So if I can make a difference and come back and put that department back together that I was extremely proud of when I walked out, that's my goal. And I don't get elected. I say to anybody that's out there right now, I never made a decision based on my party affiliation. And anybody that goes into that department and does, you ought to vote them out because that's a department for the people of Alabama. It's not a place to have a political agenda. It's too serious and it's too important for the people of Alabama.
I think you've shown us a big example of that tonight. And I do believe that you are in a unique position, even as a Democrat in this deep red state, because you do have a record and specifically in this job. And
Thank you so
I'm
much.
really
I
excited
appreciate
to be
that.
able
That
to
means a lot,
support you.
Jennifer.
For listeners out there that want to learn more about you, support your campaign, or reach out directly, where should they go?
Boy, that's the hardest question you've asked me tonight. Go to my Facebook page. You can learn a lot there. I've got 2 Facebook pages up, and that's where you'll find me. And you can keep up with where I'm at, where I'm going, and what I'm doing. But let me say this. I really appreciate being on with y'all. Y'all got a great attitude, but y'all been a pleasure to interview with, and I appreciate the questions that you've asked me. And I hope I've answered them in a way that's helped you.
This has been so insightful, so educational. Like, I feel like I've learned so much just from this interview. Like I said, my impression of the Department of Agriculture was like corn and cows. That was it. Like, I never realized sort of how broad reaching the role was. So I know I'm extremely grateful. And I think I could speak for Jennifer and Michelle as well that we all, oh, there's a dog. Oh, there's a dog.
Huh? What do you think about that?
Look at that
Yeah.
smile.
What's the dog's name?
Oh,
That's my buddy
it's a
right there.
sweet baby.
Oh, you had to bring the dog.
I knew that'd get you. I always have a secret weapon, guys. But let me say this. My daughter is a rescue and an animal person, and she has spent hundreds, thousands of dollars of her personal money rescuing animals across the state of Alabama. I'm an animal lover myself. Take care of your animals. Don't abuse them. And I just wanted to show you my little buddy that's been hanging out with me ever since we started.
Thank you so much for coming on tonight. For those listening, thank you for tuning in this week. We hope you all tune in next week. As always, to connect with us, please visit our website at BamaBlueDots.com, or you can connect with us directly on TikTok at our handle at BamaBlueDots. Y'all have a great week. Bye, y'all.
Thank y'all very much. Bye.